much better. All right, car's cleaned up. We got the garage cleaned out a little bit. We're gonna change the brake pads right now, and we also got to put the stock exhaust hangers back in because we're gonna do a new catback system. While we're taking the wheels off to work on the brakes, we might as well take a look at the tread wear since we've had the car lowered for about a month. We want to make sure everything is okay, especially since we haven't had it all in alignment yet. So here's front passenger side. No unusual wear at all, no feathering. It looks pretty good. And here we also want to make sure that our upper control arm is secured here to whatever this piece is called. Make sure that nut is tight as well, since we had the lower strut nut off when we replaced the springs. We'll check from above as well, but everything looks good here from the underside. And then we want to check the tie rod, end link, sway bar, or connector, whatever that's called. Everything's tight, already went through them, good to go. Really wanted to paint the brake calipers as well while I was under here, but I haven't selected a color. I think I'm just gonna do silver, but I really just don't have time to clean these up and paint them. But I just wasn't paying attention, but I realized that the stock brakes were Akebono as well. Cool. So these are the new brakes. The most difficult thing about swapping out the brakes on the Q50 is assembling these little buggers. And I'll put them in and just show you what it looks like. Once you do one, it's not that difficult. So the little hook right on this end goes in. You pop the little round portion of the spring there, and then this wraps around here, and that actually, I believe, is what kind of pulls your brake pad away from the rotor when you release the brakes. That way there's no rubbing. I think that's what it does. I mean, logic tells me that. And there's the other one. You just have to look at the spring. They're made for each side, but it doesn't tell you which side they go on. You just have to flip them over. They pop right in. It comes with replacement boots as well. Mine aren't in too bad a shape, so I don't think I'll replace them, but they're there if you want to. It's just the two nuts, 14 millimeter, not nuts, bolts, top and bottom. Good idea to pay attention to how everything looks before you pull everything out. You can see the springs. And then the pads themselves just slide right out. And the backside pad has this little number here toward the top. These pads are actually in pretty decent shape, but since we got them out, we're going to replace them. Pop out. Ouch. Pop right back in. I like to clean these plates up before I switch them over to the other pads. And you just apply a little bit of the supplied brake grease to the outside where the caliper will contact the pad. It keeps everything from seizing up. Obviously spread it around. Backside also. And they just slide right back into their grooves. Make sure you hit that spring. You can see how the spring pops it back out. There we go. Now you got your pads in, and the next thing, you have to make sure these guys are compressed. Luckily, my brake pads weren't that worn out, so they weren't very high. They make a tool that you can use to get them compressed. C-clamp works. Just the tool is the easiest. You can almost lower them with your fingers, but drop the caliper back in place, line up the holes, and bolt it back in. The rears are essentially the same exact process, a little bit smaller. There are little clip dealies here, and the pads themselves are substantially smaller. But again, otherwise, very similar process. Now we just got to follow this break-in process, which includes 5 aggressive decelerations from about 40 miles an hour down to 10, and then we'll do 5 moderate decelerations, 35 to 5, and then we are going to let the brakes cool down for 5 or 10 minutes or so as we drive around, and then we'll be all set. Just cruising out of the neighborhood here, we'll get to the little road, and we'll do some little bit of braking in. All right, we're gonna do a 40 down to 10. Let's get up to it. All right, we're at 40. Not too bad, pedal felt okay. Let's do it again. 40. Make sure no one's behind you when you're doing this, obviously. We did all of the 40 down to 10s, an aggressive braking, and then we did several 35 down to 5-ish or so. And now we're just cooling the brake pads back down as we head back to the driveway. So as I said, we're getting ready for this Highlands Motoring Mountain 1 lap that's coming up in just a couple of days. I'm super excited, but we got a couple of things we want to do. Have to check this. I'm not going to film them because it's just kind of, I don't want to say brainless, but it's brainless. We got to check the oil. We're going to check the coolant level. I'm not going to change the oil. Don't have that many miles on it, but we'll change it afterwards probably, just because we may be driving a little bit more aggressively than normal. We checked all of the nuts and bolts on the suspension components to make sure everything's tight. We'll drive around for a couple of days here, and then we'll make sure we check the lug nuts before we head out as well. We want to make sure all the wheels are secured down. We'll check the strut tower brace, make sure that's tight. We'll check the air pressure in all the tires. That's something we keep track of anyway, but we'll make sure it's at a optimal PSI for the highway trip to the mountains. Keep it right around 35 PSI or something like that, but once we get to the mountains, just to ensure we got a little extra grip, we'll probably air it down to about 30 PSI. You don't know how aggressive we're going to be driving. Hopefully, Wednesday before I leave, I can get into the exhaust shop and we can get this new exhaust setup situated. So everything should be good. We obviously got to clean the car out a little bit. We want it looking good when we're driving around with all these Porsche and Corvette guys. But that's it. I think we're all set to go. We're ready. Just a couple of days, so stick around. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you hadn't already. Appreciate it very much. See you in the next video.